Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Roush. I'm your own personal sales maven here to offer you tips, strategies, and techniques to master your sales conversations. Today's topic is how to close the stragglers, converting those fence sitters into buyers. Now, this topic around stragglers came up when I was having a call recently with a longtime mentor and colleague of mine. And we were talking about her group program and some ways to increase the close on the people who are kind of just like sitting out there and hanging out there. And she had shared some of the things that she had already done, which I thought was excellent. So I'm going to share those with you. And then I had shared a few other ideas with her of some things that she could do. And it got her really excited. And she said to me, "You need to record this as a podcast." So here I am recording this episode for you. I hope you find it as helpful of a conversation as that her and I had a couple weeks back when we were talking about this. So, this idea of a straggler, this is somebody who has expressed interest. They have probably had some kind of communication with you, whether it be a live call or they've shown up to something that you put on, or they have been in communication with you via email or DMs or something, but they have indicated interest, but they're just not closing. And maybe, especially when it's a group program and there's some like time limitations here of like, we need to know, is this fence setter going to get off the fence and join the group, or are we moving on? Like, how much time and energy are you going to spend into getting them to let you know what their decision is, right? So, first and foremost, let's talk about what are some common reasons that the stragglers hesitate to buy. So, one is there's some logistical conflict, like maybe it's a scheduling issue, or maybe it's a location issue if you're doing something offsite, or out of town for them, right? Like it's like a in-person event, something like that. That's one thing, logistical conflicts. Two is maybe there's some financial concerns. Maybe there's an investment anxiety. So what are we going to do to overcome those? And then the third thing is maybe there's some lack of clarity around the value of the program and how it specifically speaks to and or meets their needs. So, one of the things you want to be really careful about is making assumptions about which of those three things are causing them to be a straggler, a fence sitter. I know that I have talked about this on the podcast a few times that really it's such a common thing for us to do as salespeople and as people in general is to project limiting beliefs, our own limiting beliefs onto the person, the prospect that we're in conversation with, and or hallucinate. We act as if we can read their mind. We know why they're not getting back to us. We know why they don't understand the investment of this. But really challenge yourself when you start making these assumptions. Unless they have said to you, "This is my hesitation," then it warrants you asking, what is causing the hesitation? And I don't mean asking yourself, I mean asking them. Don't make up answers for people, because when you make up answers for people, most of the time you're wrong. Like you might go like, "Oh, I have a really good track record thinking, like I know what people are thinking." And unless you are advertising your business as having psychic services and that is what you are being paid money to do, be careful about doing it in your sales conversations, because you can really kind of shoot yourself in the foot and alienate people when you make assumptions about why they're not moving forward with you. Okay, so once we know what the objection is, then now we can get creative on solutions. So I want to share with you one that I thought was such a creative solution when the objective was logistical. So I have my colleague is putting on what am I trying to say here? Christopher, please edit this out. She is putting on a mastermind, a group mastermind, and her group mastermind involves live in-person retreats, which are awesome, by the way. I've been in a coaching program as a participant where I got to go to live retreats, and there's just nothing like the energy, the takeaways, the relationships that you build. I love these. So one of the, objections to somebody signing up is that they couldn't make one of the retreats. And it's a pretty significant investment when you're in a coaching program that's offering live in-person retreats as part of the program. Chances are you're in a bigger ticket. And so the person was hesitant to commit because they knew that the dates that were already advertised for one of the retreats they could not attend. So here's what my colleague did. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. Is she recognized that the person couldn't attend the live retreat, so she offered her a VIP day with her instead, like a private one-on-one with and my I'm calling her a colleague, but and she is, and she's a mentor and she's somebody I have great admiration for. So getting to spend a VIP day with her, which is normally an even bigger ticket, is such a huge bonus for somebody who can't attend the live retreat. So, of course, that person is going to jump on that and say, like, heck yeah, I'll take the VIP day and still sign up for the program. Like, what a great way to overcome the objection. At least check to see if you can overcome it by offering a solution. So, I love this solution. If you haven't ever tried offering any kind of solution when somebody gives you some pushback as to why they're not ready to move forward with you, you might test it and see how it goes. Because a lot of times, showing that you have some flexibility is really the way to seal the deal. I know you've probably heard me say this. Like my all-time favorite quote, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. Show your flexibility here. When somebody pushes back for logistical reasons, how can you get creative and make the program work for you and for them? Okay, now financial concerns. This will always come up in sales, and sometimes there's really nothing you can do to overcome the objection. If they truly don't have the money, it's not that they don't see the value of it. It's that they just don't have the money. Then there's really nothing you can do. I remember years ago when I was first in business, like probably in my first year, maybe two in business, I started working with a client who had hired me to do a strategy session, and then they wanted to upgrade and become a private, like VIP coaching client. And after doing the strategy session, we had a really phenomenal session. They were really excited. They were really fired up about the, actions they were going to take. And then they wanted more. And they had shared with me on the call that they had to decide between signing up to be a VIP client with me and or paying their rent. And I was like, whoa, that feels like a lot of pressure. So I suggested they pay their rent. It felt like that felt really risky, knowing what their business was, knowing how long it was going to take for them to recoup the investment that they were going to make based on their average sale price. I was like, pay your rent. I don't want you getting evicted and having that kind of pressure, because then you can't focus on sales, right? So there are times where you cannot overcome the objection, and there are times when you can. So when you find yourself in this situation, how can you get creative? Can you offer them a payment plan? And maybe you already have a payment plan, but it still doesn't work. And and if you have a group program and you need to fill it, could you offer some kind of scholarship? This is actually what my colleague did. And I thought this was another one of those brilliant ideas that I'm sharing with you today. Is she offered a scholarship. Now, determining who gets the scholarship, this was somebody that, and I agree with these criteria. And I would encourage you to think about it too. If you're going to scholarship somebody into it, there usually needs to be some kind of extra thing that they do in place of paying the full fee. So I know one of the things I've done in a program before where there was a partial scholarship for me to be in the program, but I also acted, or not but, I also acted as a trainer in the group. So I would put on trainings for the group because my topic was, sales, and it's something that everybody needed. So I would act in, like, stand in for them having to not pay like somebody else to come in to teach something. And then I also offered, as my partial scholarship, was to be a mentor to other people in the group when they found themselves in sticky situations, that I would be somebody who would, like, step in. And then the other thing I did as a participant, this wasn't actually required for me for my scholarship, but I did do it, is I showed up to every single session and I engaged. I asked questions. I always had my camera on. Like I'm a really good actual participant when when I'm in a program, I really do lean in and participate. So there's huge value for having people like that in your group. And if you can offer a scholarship that allows them to participate, it shows engagement and it also sets the culture for the other participants of what the expectations are, how they should participate, getting them to engage, ask questions, have their cameras on, show up to every meeting, be prepared, do their homework. Like sometimes it's worth it to scholarship somebody in. And again, it doesn't have to be 100% that you waive your fee, but it could just be that there's some kind of reduction so that it makes it feasible for them to participate. So that's another, I thought, was a really brilliant way to get that straggler off the fence, like get them into the program. And then I have a few more ideas for you here before we bring this to a close. Here's another one is just because you sent them a message that had either of the previous two suggestions that I gave here, the offering to be creative as far as the program and restructuring it for them and or offering some kind of a discount or a scholarship. And if you don't get a response from that person, don't assume that they are a no. Follow up. You don't want to just let it sit out there and go, well, I'm just going to assume that they saw it and they decided it wasn't a good enough, reason for them to sign up. No, let's make sure that we do some follow up. Okay. So I love to use a like forward the message where the original message was. If you send it in an email, forward the original message and change the subject line to, did you see this? And then write a little message that says, wanted to follow up and ask, did you see this message? Is this something you're considering? Would you please let me know one way or the other? Looking forward to your response and send that. And chances are the person who got the original email is going to say to you, like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to respond. Or actually, I didn't see this. So thank you so much for sending it. And now we got the conversation like engaged again. So now we know we can find out, like, are they in for the program or do I need to move on to someone else? So make sure you're doing your follow ups here. And then when you feel like there's a lack of clarity regarding the program and how it might meet their needs, here is one of my favorite sales questions to always have in your back pocket and be ready to ask people. It is, what would it take for this to work for you? Now, when you ask a question like that, you don't want to go into a bunch of story. You don't even necessarily need to give a bunch of suggestions. If we're in a live conversation, I would say, what would it take to make this work for you? And then I would be quiet and I would wait. Now, if they don't have any kind of an idea, then I might bring in the giving a menu. I know I've talked about this in previous podcasts before. I bring it into my coaching sessions with clients all the time of giving some options. Like, for instance, if we were able to do X or Y, would either of those things work? So you could check out if you're sending this, what would it take in a message? I probably would include some kind of a menu there for them so that and then your last option when you give a menu, your last bullet point is to say, or something else, dot, 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 because we're just trying to get their brain to give them an answer. And the reason this question is so impactful and works so well is because sometimes when people have a lack of clarity, they're not taking the time to figure out what they're unclear about. And until you pose this question to them, they don't actually have an answer. So the way that you get an answer to this question is by asking it, because then it allows their brain to go, oh, I need this, or, if you could do this for me. And also the answer to the what would it take for this to work for you doesn't always fall back on something you have to do as the seller. It could just be that they're like, oh, well, what it would take is I need to, check about rearranging a meeting that has normally been scheduled on the day of your sessions. Well, if they hadn't thought about doing that and they could reach out to the person that they have a scheduled meeting and they could reschedule it and move it to a different time that same day or maybe a different day, and it's really not that big of a deal, and now they get to be a part of the program, it's worth it to ask this question. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked somebody this question, and the answer has been something as simple as, oh, I need to reach out to so and so and ask if we can move our normally scheduled meeting to a different time or a different day. And the answer is almost always yes. And then they sign up for the program. So be sure to use this one. Okay, and then the last thing that I'm going to share before we wrap up here is to send what I call the closing the loop message. If you've sent some follow-ups, you still haven't heard back from the fence setter, this is when you send the closing the loop message. That is the subject line. I actually have a script for this. I give it away in the Sales Maven Society and I give it away in the studio, but it's essentially this message of like following up with you one last time just to check in and see if this is something you want to move forward with. There's a little bit more to language there, but if you can just get that in there, chances are they're going to say, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not. Don't be afraid to send this message. You don't send it like immediately, but you send it when you've done a couple follow-ups and you still haven't heard anything back. Then you send this closing the loop message. All right, I hope you found this message helpful and that you will use some of these techniques to get those sense I can't say it, to get those fence sitters off the fence. Let's get those stragglers into your program because you know you're going to be able to make an impact in their life and in their business as a result of them taking action and saying yes to you. All right. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Please leave a review and or reach out to me and let me know what was your big takeaway from this episode. I am so grateful that you're here and that you listen. I'm wishing you continued success in all that you're doing. Take care.